Hello and welcome to another Crochet with Cris video. I am your host Cris. Today we are working through making this granny square beanie cap for headhuggers.org. If you don't know what that is, the headhuggers.org is a charitable project that allows people to craft various types of hats and head huggers and caps, and then they are collected and sent to different facilities that are treating people for cancer, people who are getting chemo treatment and have lost their hair. So the pattern is down in my doobly-doo. If you don't know what a doobly-doo is, that means you're probably not on YouTube. So if you're on my blog, look up and you'll see the link to the pattern as well as a link to the main headhuggers.org website. I do have permission to do this tutorial from Sue at headhuggers.org. So I want to go ahead and get started with this. This is the third video. We have in the first video created the back hexagon, and in video 2 I showed you how to make the square, and you should have created 6 of those. So here, let me put my camera down. You can see I have my hexagon and then I have my 6 squares, and in this video I'm going to show you how to sew them together and then probably how to do the first round of the brim. We are going to be sewing these together with a single crochet seam. So if you looked, let me pick my pattern up here, camera up, there is a ridge to sewing it together, so that is when we're going to be using the single crochet to sew them together. As you see, I have all my tails weaved in. Everything is nice and clean. A tip with weaving in your tails is this is going to be the front of the piece, so try to have all your tails end on the back side, and then you don't have to worry if anything pokes out a little bit that it doesn't seem to work. So the first pieces that you're going to sew together are the squares, and you're going to be sewing the squares together in a row like this. So all 6 of them are going to be going across, and then you're going to ring them around a circle and sew the last one. So I'm going to show you how to sew the first 2. Oh, and as a note, we are done using this main color, so the variegated color or the main color used for the middle, you're not using it anymore. The rest of the hat is done with the other color, the contrasting color. So I'm going to put it on my hook here, and what you're going to do to join these, well, the easiest I found is you're going to start in the 3rd double crochet post back. That's where you're going to put in your hook original to start. And we're only, oh, that's what I wanted to tell you too. You're only using the back loop. You're not going to be putting your hook through both loops. That would be incorrect. What this does, and I don't know if you can see the detail, by doing the back loop only, you get a little, here we go. See this little line here? This is where I sewed it. This little line here is the front loop, so it gives it a little more texture in addition to the raised seam. So I'm counting 3 double crochet posts back, and that's where I'm going to insert my hook. And now on this one, I'm going to count on this about 1, 2, 3 back, and the back loop on this one over here is actually the loop that's closest to you. So 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to put my hook through that loop. And now to start this, I'm going to yarn over and pull through all 3 loops that are on my hook. And now I have 1 loop left on my hook. I'm going to pass my tail down to the back side. I'm not going to weave it along, and I do apologize for the train. I do live next to a railroad track, so that's never fun, especially when I'm trying to do videos and I don't want to start over because it gets a little long. So I'm just going to leave the train in. It's almost an Ask Miss Cris video tradition to have a train in the video anyway. Alright, so the next stitch is going to go again through the back stitches only. So, but make sure that you're going over the 2nd double crochet post in on both pieces. I'm going to yarn over and bring through the loops of the piece, and then yarn over and pull through the 2 loops that are left on my hook. This is what's going to create that ridged seam. And honestly, if you do a good job sewing your tails in, I'm just going to keep moving here while I talk. If you do a good job when you're sewing your tails in, you actually get, why isn't this going in? There it goes. It becomes reversible. you can turn your hat inside out, and then you have it with the raised seam and without. So if you pay really good attention to your weaving your tails in, and you make sure they're a nice clean sew job, then you do get the benefit of having pretty much a reversible hat. And that's true with almost any piece that you sew together. One side should be nice and smooth and pretty, and the other will have the raised seam, so it depends on your purpose. I'm paying very close attention to make sure that I'm sewing in the same stitch over the same double crochet in the pattern. I'm not duplicating anything, and I'm only going through the back loops. It's very important for this pattern. Everything, if your gauge is good, then, oops, almost went through both loops on that one. If your gauge is good, then your squares should be just the same size. Now this, if you look, I'm going into the stitch over my third, so this is the last stitch for this seam. Do that, pull it up, and I'm going to tie it off. Whoop, I just hit the hook with my camera, or the camera with my hook. Now you can do the tails right now, but I'm just going to leave them so I know where my seams are. And now I'm going to do the next one, and I'm going to put all 6 of my squares on, and then when I come back, you guys should have just a row of the 6 squares stitched together, and then I'll show you how to stitch them in the ring, and that'll be really quick. And then I will show you the hexagon, attaching it to the middle, and that will all be this video. And then after that we'll move into the brim with the 4th video. So with that said, when I see you again, you should have a row of 6 of your squares. Alright, so now you should have all 6. I don't know if I can scoot this back, and you can see I have all 6 of my squares stitched together using the single crochet stitch. And now we're ready to join the square into a ring. Now basically you're going to flip it over. It's hard to get all this in. You're going to take and you're going to flip this piece over so the ridge that you have is on the bottom. So all your stitches, your joints here should be flat. Now you're going to take each end in and flip it inward like this. And these are the 2 sides that you sew together. So you have a nice circle, and your seamed edges are actually on the outside. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to join these 2 to get a circle, and then we'll be ready to do the hexagon. So let's go ahead and do that, and the next time you see me I'll have a circle of squares and we'll be attaching our hexagon. Alright, now I've got my 6 squares sewn together, all with the single crochet seam, and we're ready to affix the hexagon into this. And it almost seems like it's not going to work, but it does. I assure you it works. I did it with the first one that I did. So it's going to get a little tight in here with all the colors, but I am going to go ahead and put my yarn. I'm still working with the J hook, and I'm using that green color. For you it could be something different, but for me it's the green. And you want it top side out, so you're going to look for that to make sure that the top is upward. And I'm going to take my square, and I'm going to find somewhere in the middle. Let's say it's going to be this first double crochet of this row. That's where, so I have a 6 cluster and then a cluster of 3. I'm going to use the first double crochet in that cluster is my starting point. I'm going to go to my square on the opposing side, and I'm going to look for that stitch over here. So here's my, sorry for the zoom here, here's my cluster, here is that first stitch, and in the back loop only I'm going to attach in. The hexagon is a little more tricky, but it's really no different. Once I get my yarn unhooked. Okay, I gotta get my yarn out. I'm gonna hook that back in. It's no different, it's just you have to pay attention to where your stitches are to make sure that you're not losing that double crochet or you're getting off stitch, because everything should line up. Pull this through and get this nice and snug. And then every one of these stitches should line up to the corner. And you're going to do, on this square, you're going to do the first 3 double crochets in the next corner. And then in this square over here, you're going to finish these 3 double crochets in. So everything should line up swimmingly. The fact that the hole is a little bit bigger is what's going to give the hat some flair. So let's go ahead and go down this side just so I can show you. Remember, I am working in the back loop only. And it does get a little hairy here and there. That first hat I had a couple stitches that were off, but I adjusted for them rather than pulling it out. So if you are experienced enough, I think even if you get off a stitch, you can self-adjust very easily if you know how to do it. Otherwise, it's probably just best to tear it out, because if you don't have them line up, then the hat is going to sit off center. And every once in a while you just do a quick check to make sure this next stitch is the first double crochet. So over on this side it should be the first double crochet, and it is. So as long as you get everything lining up okay. Now this is the second one. And now this is the third one of my hexagon's corner. So this is the last one I'm going to put in this one. And now I'm going to, same hexagon obviously, but I'm going to switch over to my next square and make sure that I'm putting that in the third one of that square. And now I'm going to turn it and just keep working down, making sure that my double crochets line up to the square. They're the same pattern for each side, so every stitch should have a mate. There's no reason why you're going to have a gap anywhere. If you do, and say you're not an experienced crocheter, you might want to tear it out and try again, but if you're experienced, you may be able to adjust as you go along. So before the next video, I should have my hexagon attached to my squares and all my tails weaved in, and we will be ready to start on the brim. So the fourth video after this, we're going to get all this put together, and then we're going to start the brim and get this hat finished off. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Happy hooking!